Aloha! Welcome to the BishopMuseum's Library and Archives. I'm Hadley Andersen.
I'm DeSoto Brown, and it's Throwback Thursday time.
That it is. What are we looking at today, DeSoto?
We are looking at restaurants.
Ooh.
Okay, where we go to dine. And it's not just that we go to dine. It's that we sometimes go to a restaurant for a specific type of experience too, because sometimes there's almost an entertainment aspect, not counting people who are singing songs and dancing, but the setting and the way it looks.
Right, I remember when Rainforest Cafe exploded when I was in Florida back in the 80s.
So things like that, theme restaurants, that's not exclusively what we're talking about, but that's part of it. Mm-hmm. So, there's a nice restaurant.
It's very beautiful.
Okay, well, here's to start with. If we go back far enough in time, obviously there weren't any restaurants in ancient Hawaii. There was nothing even approaching that. There were no commercial businesses. There was no sense of going someplace and paying for food. But starting in, certainly by the middle 1800s, there were restaurants in the sense that we know them today. And here's a picture taken in the early 1900s. This picture was taken about 100 years ago, and it's the interior of the Palm Cafe in downtown Honolulu. And as you can see, this looks just like any other cafe might have looked in the United States or Europe, and even in some other countries at that time. There are nice tablecloths, mass-produced furniture, so it's all matches, and the waiters in the white coats. The only difference between what you see here and what you might have seen in the mainland USA is that the two employees are Asian, and that's because of the population of Hawaii at that time. But otherwise, it looks like a lot of other places might have been.
Right, exactly.
And here's another photograph, which looks really, I mean, this could really be kind of anywhere USA. This is 1937. And it's what's called the Depot Cafe. The Depot Cafe was in the Railroad Depot, which used to be in downtown Honolulu. I bet you didn't even know there was a railroad depot.
I did not. That was definitely one of the things we speculated about when I first moved out here, is if we ever had trains.
Well, we did have trains, and there was a train station, and the train station building is still there. It's what was called the Oahu Railway and Land Company, or the OR&L train station. It's on King Street, across the street from A'ala Park, but there's no little Depot Cafe in there anymore. But as you can see, this is just this is like the fast food of that time period. It's a counter, so you have light meals that get served to you quickly. They're all prepared right behind the counter while you're sitting there, and the prices were low, and you could get coffee and a piece of pie and a sandwich and that kind of thing.
Just like a typical diner in anywhere USA.
Exactly. Now, something else that spread to the Hawaiian Islands.
Is that a drive-in?
That's a drive-in restaurant. Drive-ins really were invented in the United States in the 1920s, and initially they were very just crude buildings where you literally drove up next to like a little shack out in the country someplace, and somebody came out to your car and gave you food. In Southern California, in Los Angeles, drive-ins really developed into a kind of a major type of restaurant, which then spread throughout the United States. And this was really the most typical drive-in that really looked like what was going on in Southern California. It was called Kaukai Corner, and it was located at the intersection of Kalakaua Avenue and Kapiolani Boulevard. And it opened in 1936 with just one small building, but it blossomed into this beautiful streamlined building, which again looked very much like what was being built in Los Angeles at the same time. Neon sign and, as I said, streamlined, sort of an Art Deco type of structure, and space for lots of different cars. And you could go in and sit inside if you wanted to, but most people sat in their cars, and the car hop came out and served you. And Kaukai Corner was located in a very busy spot, so it had a lot of customers. It was open 24 hours. Here is a picture of it during the 1940s. It was in business till 1960, and then the building was extensively remodeled and turned into a coffee shop, which was another type of restaurant which had originated in the mainland USA and spread out here. It was called Coco's. And then it got demolished, and in 1986, the next step, the Hard Rock Cafe was built on that site. So we saw a succession of three types of American restaurants that were all popular in succession: the drive-in, the coffee shop, and then the theme restaurant. All in the same place. What do you think of that?
That's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. Now, Some restaurants, to get customers, will have a gimmick.
Right.
Okay, and here's one.
The gimmick must be the views of Diamond Head.
Well, the gimmick is partly the views, but the big gimmick is it rotates.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, this was La Ronde Rotating Restaurant, and it was located on the top of the Ala Moana building, which is part of Ala Moana Center. And this was the first rotating restaurant in the whole world.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, they seem, well, kind of cliche now.
They do seem kind of cliche, but at the time, you will remember the TV cartoon series The Jetsons.
Yeah.
Well, The Jetsons went on the air at the same time that this was invented, and one of the things that the buildings in The Jetsons looked like this type of thing. They were actually more inspired by the Space Needle in Seattle, which was built for the Seattle World's Fair, but La Ronde predated the Space Needle rotating restaurant.
Wow.
And it was quite cool. I mean, you did have beautiful views. It did rotate, so you sat down and it took an hour to go one revolution. So if you had an hour-long dinner, you got to look out and see ever-changing views.
That's a great way to do it. Any faster, and I think you probably
No, you'd get it would be
motion sick in the middle of a restaurant.
No. We don't want that. We don't want that. The building is still there. The structure is still there, but it hasn't rotated for years, and it has not been a restaurant for a long time. Some things are lost. Now, other restaurants are famous for their the building, because the building is so easy to see, as so distinctive. And this is the Wo-Fat Chinese restaurant, which was located on Hotel Street and Mauna Kea Street in downtown Honolulu. This picture was taken in 1945. And the building was constructed like this in the 1930s, and it was a real landmark downtown. It is still there, in fact.
Yeah.
The building is still there, but there's no Wo-Fat restaurant in it anymore. And it was a great big restaurant, particularly for that time period. It was a really big restaurant, and very much a landmark. And another landmark Chinese restaurant.
I've seen that.
Well, you haven't seen the actual building.
No?
No, you haven't. This was called Lao Yi Chai. It was located in Waikiki, but it was demolished in 1965, so you never saw it. And it was built by in this photograph, the guy who owned it and who constructed it was this man, whose name was P.Y. Chong. And he, uncharacteristically for a Chinese man, was not a good businessman, and he spent way too much money, and he went bankrupt, and he lost control of this restaurant. But the building itself was so scenic, and it was very eye-catching, and it billed itself as the world's most beautiful Chinese restaurant. Ooh. And who is going to question that? Well, in addition to serving Chinese food and having a very ornate and beautiful building, it also, in the post-war period in particular, was known for having a kind of having a showroom that had famous mainland artists come and perform. So for a time, it was where you could go see singing groups and orchestras and things like that. Yeah. And then the land in Waikiki became so valuable that, of course, it got demolished and turned into a high-rise.
That we talked about last week.
There's the old story. Now, the final type of restaurant we're going to talk about is the South Seas or exotic or tropical restaurant.
Well, of course, they had to originate here, right?
Aha! A common misconception, but not true.
Really?
Not true. Not true. That type of restaurant actually originated in Los Angeles in the 1930s, and then spread here, which seems kind of contradictory, but...
Well, I guess, if you already have a South Seas Paradise here, no reason to have a restaurant themed like one, right?
Well, perhaps, but also Los Angeles is the home of the movie industry, and it's the home of theatricality. So, and it was the home of people expecting exotic things or crazy things or kooky things, and so that's where it started. Well, one of the restaurants here, which was kind of had a South Seas theme, appropriately was called the South Seas Restaurant. And this was located in Waikiki. It was at Macaulay Street and Kalakaua Avenue. And this is the menu from the South Seas Restaurant from 1941. The exterior of the building looked kind of like a South Seas structure. It had palm thatching on it, etc. But it wasn't that spectacular on the inside. But the restaurants which were really famous for that, and which people still today remember, there were two of them. And they both eventually turned into chain restaurants. One of them was called Don the Beachcomber, and the other was called Trader Vic's. And each of them was started by a really colorful guy who was each of these men were sort of theatrical, you know, and they had a good sense of putting on a show. And both restaurants had the theme that you were in some. There were all kinds of different things up on the wall that made you think this is sort of a crossroads of the Pacific. So there are things from Asia and there are things from Oceania. And they served kind of amalgamation of Asian food and with some Pacific, so Americans wouldn't find it too scary to eat there. Right. So the picture I'm holding up right now is the Don the Beachcomber restaurant, which was located in Waikiki on the site of what is now the International Marketplace. And this building was constructed in about 1947, and it's built specifically to look like it is a little South Seas village amongst the palm trees. And when you went to the dinners there or the luau's there in the 1950s, you were required to wear Polynesian attire.
Required.
Required. Wow. And I don't know if they actually barred people at the door if they didn't, but everybody got in the spirit of it, and there are lots of pictures of people cutting up and having crazy times in that restaurant. The other one, as I said, was Trader Vic's, and in both cases, the original Trader Vic's, the original Don the Beachcomber, was in Los Angeles, but branches opened here. This one, the Trader Vic's, and this is of course the cover of the menu from Trader Vic's from 1951. This was located on Ward Avenue, just ever of the Blaisdell Center today. Oh. So there's a Hawaiian Electric facility there now. Well, it was, at that time, it was a very wonderful rustic looking setting with lots of trees and grass huts and things like that. And there was, it just was, again, the evoking a mythical South Seas location. And this one opened before World War II. So this one actually opened, I think, right in 1941. The other one, the Don the Beachcomber, opened after World War II. Well, when you went to Trader Vic's, you could get a souvenir, and this is a copy of that type of souvenir. It's called a trading license. Oh. And it's supposed to look like you are a trader who goes around in the South Pacific and trades things. So I'll get some pigs and I'll trade them for some copra, and I'll get some copra and trade that for rum and that kind of thing. And so the mythical character Trader Vic, that's what he did. And when you went to the restaurant, if you got a tropical cocktail, because these are where tropical cocktails originated, the Mai Tai and all of those things, they were originated by these restaurants. You got this so-called trading license that showed that you had ordered a tropical cocktail or two at Trader Vic's, and then you could take it home and say, look, here's my trading license from Trader Vic's in Honolulu in the wonderful South Seas, which we actually are not, because we're in the North Pacific, not the South Pacific.
We're actually 1,500 miles above the equator.
Exactly, but nonetheless, it's part of the illusion. It's part of the fun.
And we are closely tied with cultures that are in the South Seas.
Exactly. But no, this is true. Culturally, we are affiliated, but again, we weren't really a Trader Vic. You know, not that there ever really were any such people anyway. But it was all a lot of fun, and people really enjoyed those restaurants. So that's Throwback Thursday for this week. Yep.
If you want to find out more information about what's going on at the Bishop Museum, please visit our website, bishopmuseum.org.
Right here. And you'll find out all kinds of wonderful things that are going on here. You can, of course, come back and see us again next week for another Throwback Thursday, but you can come in person to see Bishop Museum and see all the things that are happening here, as well as keep track of us online to see what we're doing and what you might want to come in and take a gander at, because we've always got interesting and fun and wonderful things to do for all ages and all members of every single family.
Absolutely.
Okay, so till next Thursday, everybody. Aloha.